episode of The Bars Understood. I'm Eric Hicks, and this is my esteemed co-host, Delonte Wilkins. You know, it's an honor to have a brother, even though he represents undeniable media, so it's an honor.
Yeah.
And you know, today I wanna give people an idea of who I am, because last week I wasn't able to speak to that topic because something was heavy on my heart, in my mind, and I felt the need, to get that out even, before I did the episode, introducing everybody to who I was. So, today will be a more formal introduction of who I am and, what my values are and what I represent and what my life story is and why I feel I'm qualified to give my take on, what my people need to do in order to, improve our life.
Okay.
So, as you know,
Yeah.
I've been home now for a little more than a year off of a sentence of 2 life sentences, actually. My sentence was 2 life sentences plus 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to make it out by the grace of God. And, but of course, I'm a whole human being, so there's a person to tell, even, prior to me going in and doing that time, because I came in when I was 22 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would just want to you came in. What year were you locked up?
I actually came in October of 1992.
October 1992, and you didn't come home until 2022.
2022.
It was about October 2000. What year? What month?
It was actually I came home in August.
August 22. That's
August. I want to say it was either the 24th or the 25th. That shit was a blur.
Yeah.
But I know it was August, and I know it was the 24th or 25th.
It was so surreal, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was surreal. Just to go from a life sentence, to one. Just imagine, if anybody can, understand what a life sentence is under federal law.
Right.
That means that you die in jail.
Yeah.
And to go from a life sentence under federal law till to wake up and your black ass is going home. They tell you only have a couple minutes to get your shit and get the fuck out.
Yeah.
That's earth shattering, man.
Yeah.
So
you got your shit and got up out of there.
Well, in all actuality, I didn't take shit with me.
I bet you.
I left everything behind, to the brothers who was there.
Yeah.
And I, as I normally say, I told my story walking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like when this dude told me, man, Mr. Hicks, you need to get your shit and you need to get the fuck out. That's a beautiful thing to be kicked out of prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially after 30 years.
Yeah.
You understand, when I came in, listen, riding down that highway when I got released, because I had to ride to the highway to get to the bus station.
Yeah.
And you just ride down the highway, right? There's so many thoughts that went through my mind, and I can't even pin down just any one thought. All I could think of was that I'm no longer in bondage.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing was pulling up at the bus station, because it's in Pennsylvania. They take you to the bus station, but it's also a train station.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there with a fucking card, with the money that I had on my account. I don't even know what the fuck a card is, because when I came in, there were cards, but it was credit cards. Your money and stuff wasn't on the card.
Yeah.
So the money I had on my account, they just gave it to me in a card. So I'm sitting in the bus station, with a fucking card. I had no idea how to use this fucking card.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting around me and I'm watching everybody look at their phones, and I'm sitting here with a pair of some jailhouse jeans and a t-shirt. and I'm just like, wow, you know, this is the world.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is the world I'm being released to, and you know, it was a surreal feeling. My wife was on her way to get me, and you know, but I know it was gonna take her, you know, a couple hours at a minimum, and you know, I just remember, you know, just sitting there and looking around at people, man, and everybody's like, you know, looking at their phone. You know, people are looking at their iPad.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what none of this shit was.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting here, and you know, I'm just like, I'm the only motherfucker in here without a phone or something.
Yeah.
I'm just looking around at everybody.
Out of the loop.
And my ass was hungry.
Yeah.
I was hungry as a motherfucker.
You had some money in your car.
I don't lie to you. And so, you know, and you know, me, you know, jail is a place, you know, where it makes you kind of insular. So you don't really like to go up and really speak to people that you don't know. Yeah. So I'm sitting here, my fucking stomach is growling like a motherfucker. And only thing I could think of was, you know, like, yeah, I'm hungry, but I'm free. So, you know, the amazement of being free, that shit pretty much trumped being hungry, you know, in that moment.
It take a minute to get prison out your mind. So I'm just trying to imagine you, like, just that feeling. Because you almost still feel like an inmate. You like, I ain't supposed to be around these people.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the funny part is that, you know, when you move cautiously. So it took a while. Once I got in the bus station, when he dropped me off and I went in there and I sat down, I didn't want to move. So I sat in that spot and I just watched people for probably almost 2 hours. I just sat there and I watched people. My black ass was hungry.
Right.
You know, but I'm sitting here, you know, I'm part of me is really still in shock.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here, I'm watching people, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know, it was a lady sitting a few chairs down from me. She was, you know, caught up in her movie. I think she had an iPad.
Yeah.
So I'm looking, you know, I'm looking over there at her, but you know, I have a thing where I don't like to stir at people. So I would just glance, and I'm, you know, most of the time I just spent, you know, staring off into space and shit because it's all kind of thoughts going through my head. But after a couple hours, fucking hunger kicked in. Yeah. You know, so I was like, damn, I wonder if anybody can hear my stomach growling. Yeah. And I walked upstairs to the train station, you know, and you know, when you come out of jail after doing 3 decades, you know, for anyone who has been in jail for any significant period of time, you probably would, you know, can relate to, like, when you move around, you don't really understand the concepts of like space. So when I went upstairs, like, my biggest fear was, damn, suppose I can't find my way back down to where I was sitting. Yeah. You know, just something as simple as that. Yeah. You know, so I went upstairs one time. I remember I went upstairs one time, and I looked around, but I wouldn't allow myself to walk around the train station. There were people, you know, walking around, you know, people preoccupied with, you know, catching a train, and I'm just looking on in amazement because I'm like, wow, you know, this is what the world looked like, you know. For anybody who has, you know, like any even, you know, a remote understanding, a motherfucker been gone for 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually around people, and so I'm just looking, I'm like, wow, you know, like, people are just moving on with their everyday life. Nobody's paying me no mind.
Yeah. Take us back to 1992 though. 1992, because I'm sitting right here thinking, I'm like, dang, you ain't been home since 92. And you come home, all this technology, everybody got on their phones. They didn't have cell phones in 92. Matter of fact, they had beepers in 92. I don't think
they had cell phones. Phones actually, you know, like the phones was like some big stupid shit.
The big Jones.
White Jones. You walking around with shit up to your ears. Yeah. But, you know, like, but that was like back then, you know, like, if you had a phone, like, that was like some status shit. If you had a car phone, you was like a quote unquote, you was a bad motherfucker.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but you know, in 92 in DC, and I'm pretty sure in a lot of urban areas in DC, it's really hard to describe. In that, you know, there was, of course, you know, there was good and there was bad. Mm-hmm. And with us, let me just say this, because I don't like to refer to the guys on the case with me as my co-defendants, my co-conspirators. Those are my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because way before anything related to this drug shit, you know, we ran through the alleys playing, you know, we was kids.
Yeah.
You know, we would fucking nail basketball bike ties.
Yeah.
You know, we would nail bike ties up to Tone fucking when he stayed on V Street. We would nail fucking bicycle rims up.
Yeah.
We would tape nets onto it, and you know, we would play the game in DC back then. I don't know if y'all still play it. It was called 33.
30. Come on now. Of course we playing 33.
Look, listen, you know, shit changed.
Yeah.
But you know, like we was real kids.
Yeah.
You know, Ronald. Shit, I remember, you know, walking around his grandmother's house. Ma Queen. You know, just Ronald was a baby. You know, I was a baby. Danny was a fucking a kid. You know, I remember, you know, we used to always tease him about his mama Dee Dee. We was, you know, Dee Dee mean as shit. You know, Doomy came a little later, but you know, you know, nevertheless, I still consider Doomy a brother. Yeah. And but he didn't necessarily grow up with us as far as, you know, ripping and running through the alleys playing, you know, getting a joy and experience in childhood. Yeah. And that's important because the fact that we were kids, it relates to the story overall. Yeah. And the reason why I say that it relates to the story overall is, and I want the people, you know, to understand, you know, that those who tune in the bar is understood. I want them to understand that this is how the government works. You know, like people, you know, hear about what it means to suffer an injustice, but a lot of people, you know, they don't really know what injustice looks like. And you know, so I want them to when you look at me, I don't want you to see injustice. I want you to look at somebody who overcame the injustice. I've never made excuses. Yeah. I don't consider myself necessarily a victim, but I consider myself as one. You know, I'm a fighter. Yeah. My brother's a fighter. Yeah. So back then, you gotta just think, right? Our indictment charged specifically, it charged me and Tone with being kingpins. Yeah. Right? And they charged all of us with what's known as the RICO Act, something that they charged the mafia with. Right? Now, I want people to let that sink in. Something that they charged the mafia with, and they charged me and Tone as kingpins. I want that to sink in because I want them to really understand that they charged us with running a conspiracy from 1987 all the way up to 92. Yeah. Now in 1997, right? When they 1987. Excuse me. Thank you. In 1987, in January, right? When they alleged that this conspiracy started. Yeah. You know how old I was?
Tell me.
In 1987, in January, I was 16 years old. Okay. That would have put Tone at approximately 14. Okay. They charged us with being kingpins. So that means starting from the age of 14, they saying that this motherfucker is 14 and this little black motherfucker is 17 or 16. You motherfuckers started an enterprise and you were kingpins. From that year moving forward. Everybody else, Ronald, Danny, Doomy, they charged them with what's known as the RICO Act. Yeah. But they would Ronald was shit in 87. Ronald had to be maybe 13. He was around 13 years old. He's a racketeer at the age of 13. This is what, you know, this is what they do to black bodies. So they charge us with these charges, right? In 92. We charged with these charges. Tone and I were charged with being kingpins. We were also charged with racketeering, and everybody else was charged with being, you know, a racketeer. So I want people, and I want to explain it in a way where people understand, even if you've never even heard of, or you're not familiar with, you know, the law per se, even if you're not familiar with the Constitution per se, right? some of the things that I say, I don't want them to sound outlandish, but the United States is outlandish. And I would challenge any legal scholar to come and debunk anything that I'm about to say about how our trial proceeded and what was considered law then and what is considered law now. Not everything, because they changed some of the more radical concepts, but there are certain aspects of federal law that haven't changed since 92. So we were charged with these, when you charge with the Kingpin in the federal level, what's called CCE. That's continual criminal enterprise. If you're convicted as a Kingpin on the federal level, they have a couple options. The first option, they can sentence you to a mandatory minimum of 20 years. The second option, the one that they charged me and Tone with, you are sent to jail for the rest of your natural life, meaning that you will never see the streets again as a human being. And that's called 21 U.S.C. 848B. So they charged us with 21 U.S.C. 848B, right? Now, what makes this shit preposterous is that, people would think that in any civilized country that they said, well, if they charge you with something, shit, at least they have to prove it before you can be sentenced for it. That's not how the law works. Not in these United States of America at that time. And let me explain. During that era, you can be charged, especially with drug crimes, because people have to understand we were charged with a crack conspiracy. We were charged as being kingpins who distributed crack. Now, crack was, during that time, it was a boogeyman. And when I say boogeyman, meaning that these congressional figures, they took every stereotype, they took every presumed lie that they could think of, and they attached it to crack. But they really attached it to the black community as a whole, because we all know that crack was something that was deemed as a black drug. So, not to mention, and I'll get to that point later, that all of this shit was subsequently debunked. Every fucking thing that they said, from crack babies to the predators that crack produced, all of this shit, scientists testified before Congress and said all this shit was a lie. But during that time, this was the ideology that ruled. So during that era, here we are, these young black men who just a few years ago was running the alleys, riding bikes and fucking playing 33 with dirty tennis and cut off jeans and shit. Just a few years removed from that, now we find ourselves sitting in federal courtroom. That's Superior Court, but federal court. We find ourselves sitting in federal court, all right? And we were charged with CCE. You had a murder charge on the indictment that no one was ever convicted of. And that's something that I'll explain as I move forward. But here we are sitting in federal court, charged with these charges of being kingpins from the age of me 16, him 14, up to the age of fucking 22, him being 20. Everybody else as being racketeers from the ages of fucking 13, 14, 15, all the way up to being 18 or 19. So here we are, sitting in federal court. Now, of course, they're gonna, to all of us, guys who have grew up with each other, I love these guys. And this is why I tell you, I don't call them co-defendants or co-conspirators. These are my brothers. Real brothers. So, of course, telling, snitching, that's not an option, because that's not how we were raised. Even if they were strangers, that would never be an option.
So me listening to this, right? And I do got some history, because we from the same neighborhood, First Street. We from the same. And one thing that I always I know is like First Street was a real community. That's one thing I know about First Street. It's a real community, and I always grew up and I'm from a different generation. I grew up listening to stories about you guys. Listening, like you guys was legends to up into the day that I seen you in prison. Mm-hmm. And you remember the first thing I said to you? I said, "Dang, you look just like K-Mon."
Remember.
I said, "Dang, you look just like K-Mon."
Remember.
And you know, I grew up with K-Mon. I had grew up with him, and we southwest to First Street and found our way. And just to see your face and see this legend that I always heard these stories about, Fat Earth and all these. You talking about been gone since, you said 20 years old?
22.
22 and did almost 30 years.
Yeah, I did 29 years and 10 months.
And the government paint this picture, because we know the government, like me having experience with the government, we know that they like to put a 10 on the 2. And people that don't understand, they like to exaggerate things. They like to exaggerate things and make these stories bigger than they is. You talking about a 16-year-old running a elaborate criminal enterprise. By the way, y'all lost some geniuses from what I heard, though. I heard y'all some straight A students.
Well, yeah,
on the road.
And we were all smart. You know, we all went to school. I graduated from Dunbar. I went to Carroll, Archbishop Carroll. I graduated from Dunbar in '88. You know, we were all smart, but I think that, you know, what people have to understand, and it's, you know, something that you know, the United States will deny is, you know, they often blame the crime bill from during that time. They say, oh, you know, the Congressional Black Caucus, they supported it, and I'm pretty sure that they did. But my thing is that, you know, over the years, you know, I was fortunate to dedicate myself to the law. That's why I was able to graduate from Georgetown University.
You just said something. There's just the Congressional Black Caucus supported what?
Well, they supported the amendments to the U.S. Code with respect to the crack.
And they supported your life sentence.
In a word, they did support it.
Congressional Black people supported
Congressional Black Caucus.
Okay.
And this is the penalty that we pay, and this is why, you know, I always tell you that we have to be careful of what we sign up for. We have to be careful with what we choose to align ourselves with, because we can align ourselves with something, you know, that looks completely appealing, you know, from a topical perspective.
Yeah.
But when you begin to peel back the layers, you begin to see that it's rotten.
Yeah.
And I cast no aspersions on the Congressional Black Caucus. I would hope that hindsight will give them the understanding to realize that during that time that me personally, I think that they were made a fool of. I don't want to cast any of the more insidious aspersions upon them and think that they were supported when they would have known the devastation, not just in D.C., but throughout the nation. Because when I first got to the feds in the summer of '94, I was a kid, basically. I was a young man, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I was 24, but I'm coming from D.C. The United States Attorney's Office, they put in a request that me, Ronald, and Tone, that we be sent away from the East Coast. So I wind up in California, Tone wind up in Kansas, and Ronald wind up in Colorado. Yeah. So, you know, this is just, you know, just one of the things, but, you know, not to stray too far from my point of you know, explaining exactly what happened, because I need for people to understand exactly how the law functioned back then, and it will paint the picture of why today, and even when I got released, I'm not thankful for the First Step Act, and I'm not thankful really for any of the legislation, you know, that was, you know, produced during that era or before, because we should have never been incarcerated for those many years. And let me understand, you know, let me explain. Mm-hmm. And when I explain, I want to say this. I challenge any scholar. I don't care where he's from, because I'm confident in my legal knowledge. I graduated with honors from Georgetown Law School.
Georgetown, okay.
So I challenge any legal scholar to sit where you're sitting and tell me that what I'm about to say is either false or that it's not consistent with the Constitution. When we came in, there was this the way that the law was structured. First of all, let me explain to the people very quickly and in layman terms about the sentencing guidelines. Okay, the sentencing guidelines, they became effective in 1987. Okay. Right? The sentencing guidelines was this elaborate system of sentencing that was supposed to help judges. It was supposed to lead to more consistency in federal sentences. Now, to those who have the benefit and the great fortune of watching us talk about this, the people that they were talking about sentencing were all of these young black motherfuckers in the city. Yeah. This is who this was made for. Yeah. But it was to give judges consistency in sentencing these little black motherfuckers running around the United States who they felt were predators. Yeah. Now, this is the diabolical part of it. Is that, factors that people would have normally thought was something that they would have to be charged with, whether it's something like murder, whether it's something like attempted murder. In our case, it was like a drug quantity. These are things that have real consequences on your sentence. When I say real consequences, picture you standing in front of a judge and you walk into that courtroom with the expectation that you're going to get 1 or 2 years, and you walking out of that courtroom with 30, 40 years or possibly life. It has happened. And let me explain how it's happened. Because under the federal sentencing guidelines, you don't have to be found guilty of something beyond a reasonable doubt in order for you to be sentenced for it. The standard of proof under the federal sentencing guidelines for something like murder, for something like whether or not you distributed a 20 rock, or whether or not you distributed fucking 50 kilograms, it's only a civil standard of proof. Preponderance of the evidence. That's the lowest standard of proof in law, period. Civil law, let alone criminal.
You said preponderance evidence. Preponderance means actually overwhelming, right?
No. Okay. Overwhelming evidence. You got 3 standards of proof. Okay. The highest one is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
The next one is clear and convincing. Okay. And the bottom is preponderance of the evidence.
What's the you probably know the Black's Law Dictionary of preponderance. Tell me what that
preponderance of the evidence means that it's more likely than not that you did something.
More likely than not that you did something. Something.
Right. So now, having said that, let me educate. Yeah. In our case, and in all of the cases throughout the United States, in federal court during that time, right? You take someone such as ourselves. I'm gonna stick to us because that's what's relevant. Okay. We go to trial. The jury, they're looking at all these fucking kids in the courtroom, and they say, "Oh, it's no way that these kids were kingpins." Yeah. So they don't convict us of kingpins. They don't acquit us, mind you. But remember, your black ass, no matter how much the United States dislike you, the Constitution is supposedly applies to you, so you have a presumption of innocence. Yeah. So the jury didn't convict us of being kingpins. They only convicted us of being what's called just a basic conspiracy, and they convicted us of racketeering. But then racketeering doesn't carry any mandatory jail time.
So we talking about 90 in years 90 to 92, 87 to 92, because this is what they this is the context that they provided for us. And we talking about a culture, because DC, it was you wasn't the first person selling crack cocaine. You probably wasn't the last person. Definitely not the last person.
Not at all.
So we in 92, they convicted you of selling crack cocaine. And by the way, these is all. Do you mind explaining like the build up? Like, what are they actually? What's their issue with you? Why? Because you're not the only one selling crack.
No,
it's the culture selling crack in this black community. So you ain't the first one selling crack, and you probably the last one. You definitely not the last one. So go ahead, tell me.
Let me highlight. During that era, right? They had this fascination with drug crews.
Okay.
And it's not ironic that you had the R Street crew. It was right around the corner from us on Lincoln Road and all.
Yeah.
That's a couple fucking footsteps away. You had Newton Street, which was further uptown, northwest. And then you had us. We were the crews. We came right after the Rayford.
Yeah.
So we came right after him. And one of the things that I want to explain is that and this is why I said whether it's a coincidence. If you look at Rayford's neighborhood of New Orleans, if you look at R Street, if you look at First Street, if you look at the area up there on Newton Street, you know what they all have in common?
Tell me.
They've all been gentrified.
Wow. These is residential neighborhoods when I think about it. These is not projects. First Street is a residential neighborhood with all houses. I mean, up the street you might got Ledre Park, which is housing. Down the street, but this is all mostly residential neighborhoods.
Well, they were all residential neighborhood, right? And I want people to understand something about, you have people who cringe when you say systemic or systematic racism, right? But I want to explain how that works, because I think a lot of times we get caught up in systematic or systemic racism, right? That means that all of your systems, right? All of your systems have been infected by the ideology of white supremacy.
Yeah.
And I think that where we get caught up a lot of times is that we try to fight that battle on one front.
Yeah.
Systematic racism is not a battle that you can fight on one front, because it's permeated every single system under the United States government.
Right.
So you can't fight that battle on one front. You need to have people that are who have their attention trained on different fronts. Now, for us, I'm going to explain about how the guidelines that represented a continuation of systemic racism, and it made a convenient way to deal with black youth in a way where you could literally put them away for life, as was done us, and it would be done in a way that's not controversial. And so we went to trial. The jury, they didn't find anyone guilty of murder. They didn't find anyone guilty of being a kingpin. They did return an indictment for racketeering. Not an indictment, but a verdict of guilty for racketeering, and they returned a verdict of guilty for conspiracy.
Yeah.
But the important thing is this: these convictions, the judge, he was required by law at that time to tell the jury, we don't want you to convict them of selling kilograms. We're only asking you to convict them of distributing what's known as a detectable amount of crack.
Yeah.
A detectable amount can be some shit that's worth $5.
Yeah.
So we're asking the jury, if you find that from 1987 to 1992 that they distributed a detectable amount of crack, you can find them guilty. Then
a detectable amount, just any amount.
Any amount.
So any amount, you selling nickel bags or 10 bags.
Any amount. Your black ass could have sold a motherfucker a $3 hit out the back door.
Because this was one of the things that, because as I was studying you guys' case, because I was trying to understand what was going on. I left you in prison. Mm-hmm. And I told you, I said, what? You probably remember my words. I said, man, I'm going to go out, use my feet and my legs.
I remember.
and I'm gonna support whatever I could do. So part of what I looked into when I think about your case, they built it up over time. They say each transaction led up to a certain amount of kilograms. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. But the thing is this. Let me explain this. And I feel like I'm preaching to the choir now. So if I get holy on the motherfucker, excuse me.
Yeah.
When I say yes and no, this is what I mean. They don't even look at for purposes of the jury. They're not looking at whether or not your sales, when they're aggregated, meaning that they are combined.
Yeah.
They don't look at whether or not those sales would actually make you a kingpin, so to speak,
right.
or even under just the simple conspiracy. They're not looking at that. Now, what I will say is this: they did ask the jury to that one of the things that they had to find in order to determine whether or not we were kingpins, that we distributed a key and a half of crack, right. and we were never convicted of that. So now, but for the conspiracy, the jury could just find that, hey, one of you black motherfuckers sold $5 worth of crack on First Street one day, and that was enough for us to find you guilty. Now, what makes this interesting is this. Under the federal sentencing guidelines, right? When those sentencing guidelines were enacted, right? And they assigned all of these findings that judges would make that would have these dramatic effects, on your sentence. The judge were to make these findings at sentencing under a preponderance of the evidence, a civil standard of proof. And I want people to understand that you talking about taking somebody's life. And you assigning a civil standard of proof. And when I say taking somebody's life, I want that to sink in, because I want a person to understand exactly what I mean.
To me, it's a culture that you was born into. Because I'm sitting right here just doing the math, because I didn't create the conditions I was born into. And I recall, I just recall growing up in my time. I mean, you've been long gone from at this time. Crack's still a thing. You gone.
Right.
Crack's still a thing. And I remember growing up, it was still a pretty lucrative thing to get into at the times that I was growing up. And to me, watching all the despair that our communities were in, even at the time when I was growing up, I can only imagine in 90s and 92s when you went in. So I'm sitting right here like trying to do the math. Is like, what do they expect the culture to?
I learned something.
Yeah. Okay.
The Bloomingdale community where we were raised. A lot of times people have a false notion of Northwest or Uptown, a place with money. A lot of people didn't know that from like the year 1979 on forward. Did you know that one of the poorest communities in D.C. was the Bloomingdale community? Mm. And I didn't know that. It's a book that was written that speaks to that. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the features that the lawyer put in our appeal. But what happened, it was a perfect storm. Yeah. We got convicted. So now you got this prosecutor. You got these 5 young black men, before, because they actually had played out. So you got these 4 young black men that have been convicted of this conspiracy and RICO. No drug amount attached to it, but they've been convicted. Yeah. So now we walk in this courtroom, and a part of us knew what to expect, but just to see the barbarity of it, the procedures, right? And I want people to stick with me because, and again, this is the point that I would challenge any scholar. I don't care where you're from. Mm-hmm. I would challenge any scholar to come and tell me that I'm lying. Yeah. When we walked in that courtroom, the jury hadn't found us guilty of any quantity of crack. Yeah. The jury hadn't found that any of us were leaders. Yeah. They hadn't found that we obstructed justice. Yeah. They hadn't found any of this. Yeah. And the reason why I say this is because I'm going to explain how these things affect your sentence. Mm-hmm. Now, under the sentencing guidelines, if you have been convicted during that time of just distributing or conspiring to distribute a detectable amount. My criminal history at the time, I didn't even have a criminal history.
Yeah.
None of us had a criminal history. So your guideline range or your sentencing range at that time would be approximately 12 to 18 months. That is months.
Yeah.
So let me show you what happens. You get in there. I'd never even heard of preponderance of the evidence.
Yeah.
Had no idea what the fuck it was.
Yeah.
We walk into this courtroom because we were sentenced individually.
Yeah.
Right? So, me, I walk into this courtroom, right? I'm standing here. My lawyer is like, it's gonna be rough. Which I already pretty much, I knew because we had seen what happened to R Street. By this time, all of them had already gotten life.
Yeah.
So we had pretty much steeled ourselves for life. But still, just looking at the process, So now when I walk into this courtroom, we had already got our pre-sentence investigation reports. And this is another reason why they don't make these things available to the public. The public should demand, even though there's sensitive information, sensitive, the public should demand that these fucking PSIs be made public because they would be appalled to learn of the shit that judges are able to find by preponderance of the evidence.
Yeah.
Right? And put your ass away for life.
Yeah.
So now I walk in here, right? Walk into this courtroom, right? Haven't been found guilty of no drug quantity.
Yeah.
I haven't been found guilty of being a leader of any enterprise. I haven't been found guilty of any obstruction of justice. So I walk into here, right? In reality, I'm facing 12 to 18 months, right? Well, that changed in a hurry. First and foremost, the judge found that me and Tone, that we were responsible for approximately 21 keys of crack.
Okay. How did that come about? 21 keys.
Well, the government, they're able to take all of the testimony from the trial because we don't know what the jury believed and what they disbelieved because the jury didn't convict us of being kingpins, right? So they're able to take this and they're able to give this to the probation department.
Yeah.
In the probation department, they prepare your PSI. They go through the testimony that's given to them by the government and they get. And the government adds these drug quantities. So if someone say, for example, Delonte sold me a key a week, right? During the trial, you may think that this is they're blowing hot air. But little do you know that if you're convicted, that key a week is going to become a real tangible part of your sentence.
Okay.
So now they take all of these quantities and they add them up
from testimony.
But remember, they tell the jury, we're not asking you to find whether or not we don't care if you believe these persons or not. All we want, if you find that this person conspired to distribute a detectable amount, a fucking dime, $3 worth, that's enough to find them guilty. So now, the probation department, they add all these things up with the help of the government. So when I walk into this courtroom, I'm now held accountable for 21 kilograms of cocaine. 21
kilograms, not at all in one possession.
No.
Nothing that you ain't got 21 keys sitting around.
No.
You got over
they don't
a
even have
time
to
period.
Produce the drugs. They don't have to produce any of these drugs during your trial.
Did they even catch you with any drugs?
No. When I was arrested over Northeast. Right, I didn't have any drugs on me. I had no money on me or nothing.
So they didn't find no money, no drugs. They don't even got. This is ghost.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, and I would say this to all people: they don't have to arrest your black ass for drugs in order for them to sentence you to it. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people sitting in federal prison right now will tell you they'll sing to the choir, "Hey, that motherfucker's telling the truth." They don't have to because that's not how federal law works. So I walk in here, right? Now, with these findings, the finding that I was responsible for 21 keys alone by preponderance of the evidence, that alone took me from that little 12 to 18 month range all the way up to where I knew if nothing else was found, that I was going to get from 30 years up to life. But they didn't stop there. The next question that was answered was, oh, well, we also found that Mr. Hicks and Mr. White, that they were leaders of this vast drug empire by preponderance of the evidence. So now that took me from 360 months to life to now, under those guidelines at the time, of mandatory life sentences. So that put me at a 46. Anything over 42 during that time
for ghost drugs, because that brings me back to my first point I mentioned earlier. I'm like, they built it up over time, from what I understand, and I'm like sitting right here thinking like make it make sense. Like, we talking about 21 kilos. You could have been a middleman. You could have been anything like 7. You don't sound like you're a kingpin.
Well, yeah, and that's the point. And a lot of things that are done to black folks, it's done directly in our face.
Mm-hmm.
And our ignorance is used against us.
So you stand right here in front of you, say you was not I probably was getting I wasn't a kingpin.
Well, that's the thing. According to the Sixth Amendment, right?
Yeah.
The Sixth Amendment says that, your charges, basically, the Sixth and the Fifth Amendment in conjunction, they give you a right to presentment of charges against you in an indictment.
Yeah.
No jury of my quote-unquote peers ever found that I was a kingpin.
Yeah.
That doesn't stop the United States from sentencing you as
a
if
kingpin.
you were a kingpin.
Because that's what's throwing me off. Because I'm sitting right like, I mean, y'all convicting somebody on ghost crap. Who knows off testimony. Well, you ain't recovered nothing.
Well, let me go one further. You convict them under it. You convict them of it, but you don't convict them. Everybody knows beyond a reasonable doubt. And I have to stress it, and I have to continue to stress that please don't believe the hype.
Mm-hmm.
Your ass can be convicted of something by preponderance of the evidence. I can't stress that enough.
Preponderance,
right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I say that, the leadership, by that point I'm already at a mandatory life. So in my mind, I just basically tap out. Mm-hmm. But I do hear the other things that they say that I committed by preponderance of the evidence. They say that you obstructed justice and that you told somebody to lie to the grand jury. That's another 2 points. They say that you obstructed justice when you attempted to flee from the police when you were arrested. That's another 2 points. Then they said that you possessed a firearm throughout this conspiracy, and I had a gun charge that I was acquitted of. The jury actually acquitted me of possessing an AK-47.
Yeah.
So they didn't enhance me for the AK-47, but they enhanced me for another gun. But my thing is, but you never charged me with an indictment.
Yeah.
So I say this to say that there was a sister who wrote this book. You may have heard of it. It's called the New Jim Crow. Michelle Alexander.
I'm familiar.
I love the book, and I will one day I would actually love to sit down and talk with her about the book.
Mm-hmm.
I just think in the book I wish that she would have talked more about the federal sentencing guidelines, because I just think that it's a travesty that people can be sentenced for conduct that they've never been charged for. And conduct that's been dismissed. And I say been dismissed because after the trial, the government, they still had the option of taking us back to trial for the 848, which was the Kingpin, and the murder. But they already had got what they wanted. So they chose not to take us back to trial for that stuff.
So, but I'm struggling. So you telling me it wasn't on your indictment, and they still found you guilty for things that's not on your indictment?
It doesn't have to be under federal law. In order for you to be sentenced for something, it does not have to be in your indictment. Now, the Fifth and Sixth Amendment says you have a right to a trial by jury.
Yeah.
And the founding fathers, what people love to call them, the slave owners, the rapists, the founding fathers, they put in the Constitution, basically you have a right to trial by jury. What that's been construed as by the Supreme Court is that, all of the facts that are essential to your sentence should be included in the accusation against you, which is your indictment. Mm-hmm. But that's not how federal law works, because the guidelines don't work like that. And I think the reason why I keep coming back to the guidelines is this, because, and let me teach real quick. Mm-hmm. We had 3 branches of government, right? You got the legislative branch, you got the judicial branch, and you have the executive branch. Okay, The executive branch, they're charged with enforcing the law.
Mm-hmm.
The judicial branch, they're charged with interpreting the law.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the legislative branch, they are charged with making the law. Well, guess what? This is how shrewd they are. The United States Sentencing Commission, they said, hey, we don't want the Constitution to apply to them, so we're going to put them outside of the three branches of the government. Mm-hmm. So they weren't part of the judicial branch.
Yeah.
They weren't part of the legislative branch,
mm-hmm.
and they weren't part of the executive branch. Mm-hmm. They were an agency, and they functioned outside of those three branches. But they were allowed to draft guidelines that eluded the protections of the Constitution, but had real
consequences with your life.
Exactly. So now, but this is how you know that it's all bullshit. For one, I can remember reading cases, right? Back in I wasn't reading shit 91. I was home.
Yeah.
When I really began to get in tune with the law, I remember I was fascinated because I wanted to know how could a system like the United States Sentencing Guidelines be pulled off, and there not be a fucking revolution for all of these people who talk about, we believe in states' rights. I give it a middle finger, because if you really cared, then the federal system, it would have been burned down a long time ago. I'm talking about criminal justice.
The federal system.
Right. So I say fuck you, and I have a reason for saying fuck you, and I'll get to that. But there were judges, right? When I began to really, I had boxes of shit that I copied on the guidelines. There were judges, right? Back in the Ninth Circuit, right? Back in 1990, 91, right? And I would tell people, don't take my word for it. Mm-hmm. Go and do your homework. There were judges that said, hey, we can't make these findings by preponderance of the evidence. I'm telling you now, we can't do this. We can't do this because what we are being asked to find, these are really elements of crimes. Mm-hmm. Now, according to the Constitution, do you know what has to happen in order for an element to be attributed to you?
Tell me.
A jury of your peers has to find beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed that particular element.
Beyond a reasonable doubt, not preponderance.
Not preponderance.
Mm-hmm.
So what they were able to do was they were able to take these things that were historically viewed as crimes, and they were able to put them under these guidelines and remove a finding of reasonable doubt. So these judges said, hey, we can't do this.
So we in 92, and is it contributed to, because I'm trying to put in context. Because I'm not sure the baddie count because there was a lot of murders happening in the 90s. That's what I do know. And I'm not quite sure the years of when it was 500 baddies in DC so this is the context of the city that we living in, right? Because 92, I'm not sure if you know, but probably was a few hundred bodies that dropped in DC. It was murder capital at the time. Is this playing into your sentencing? Is this playing into them calling you, because I remember the word super predator. Is this playing into that?
Well, this is the thing, Tate. Mm-hmm. If we're going to be a nation of laws, if we're going to be a nation that follows the Constitution, this shit can't play into my sentence. Mm-hmm. Because if it plays into my sentence, then I want to see you go and I want to see you grab a motherfucker in Montana or in Idaho, and I want to see you sentence them for a murder that you've never charged them with under the sentencing guidelines. Yeah. This shit only happened in urban areas.
Is DC specifically, because DC don't have a vote, from what I understand. So their system is completely different, seems.
Well, no. DC, well, see, you have two systems in DC. You have Superior Court and you have federal court.
Yeah.
We were in federal court. But when I got to the feds, one of the things I realized was, whoa, this shit happened all over.
Yeah.
It just happened in DC.
Okay.
It happened all over.
So the feds pick you up anywhere. They don't give a fuck about what's going on in your state.
No, the feds can, in that listen, this is a business.
Yeah.
And that's something I'll touch on. It's a business. And when I say it's a business, the reason why I say it's a business, because I want every motherfucker that's listening to me now and who listens to Bob Understood in the future, I want you to understand that one thing I'll never do, I'll never bullshit you. Anything that I tell you I can stand on, I will put my name on, I will put my honor on. I'm a motherfucker who took a life sentence. I didn't flinch. I went to jail for what I believe in. I believe that for one, I dislike rats. First and foremost. But if you do something, then you should be a man. And you should be able to deal with the consequences that will come with it. Now, this is the thing, right? You look at all of the urban areas, right? All the urban areas during that time, right? When I got in, I was able to see firsthand, damn, this shit happened everywhere. It didn't just happen in D.C. So I'm around all of these young black motherfuckers from all over, and I'm like, damn, this motherfucker got life. Now during that time, guys in California, the wave hadn't really hit them as hard yet. So they were like shocked to hear like, damn, G, you got a life sentence? I'm like, yeah, I got a life sentence, man, for drugs. And so, it was astonishing to them. But my thing is that, again, when things happen to us, right? It happened to us because of our own ignorance, right? It happens to us because the injustice, it's done, in our elementary schools. We don't learn about what, and I mean really learn about what the Constitution is, what the Constitution is supposed to guarantee you. So it makes it easy for them to come to our communities and, for them to arbitrarily remove us from our communities and not give us what's called due process of law. And I've never bitched, I never moaned about having a life sentence, but when I got, at its core, as time went on, I began to realize that something was wrong.
Something wrong. Because you go in there, you think I might get 18 to 20 months. You ain't think life.
Well, when I saw what happened to R Street, I knew we was gonna get life. When we got convicted, I pretty much made peace with that. A part of you being young and you being, and you having this feeling, when you're young, you have a feeling of invincibility. So having a life sentence, it never really hit me. It only began to hit me as I got older and as I started to see, like my family members passing away. I'm a dude who, and it's something that I don't speak about a lot, but my mother and father have been missing since I was 5 years old. And that's a whole nother story. But so now I'm coming up in this impoverished community without a mother, without a father. My mother and father have been missing since 1975. To this day, they've never been found. There's never been any real investigation conducted, which is the norm when you have missing black people. But I'm this young black male, so by the time they were missing, I was 5 years old. So now, by the time I'm 22, I'm standing in front of this fucking judge who's telling me, hey, by the way, you're about to spend the rest of your life in jail.
Wow.
So you don't make peace with it. You're young, and a part of you is impetuous. You think, fuck that, So it never really hit me until time started going by, and I realized that, hey, these motherfuckers really plan on you spending the rest of your life in jail. And I want to say that a part of you wants to say that that this wasn't a plan, but it's hard not to think that when Bill Clinton, when he was in office and they began to build all of these fucking federal prisons, right, in places like fucking, whoever heard of fucking Victorville, California, Minersville, Pennsylvania, Jonesville, Virginia. You know what all of these places have in common? They were rural white areas. So they built all of these fucking prisons in these rural white areas, and they had every intention on filling them with black ass bodies and some brown bodies. And when I say brown bodies, let me be clear though, right? I don't say all Hispanic people, because I've come across a lot of Hispanic people who say, hey man, yo, be black. So they plan to put all of these fucking black bodies and these brown bodies in these prisons. And, you know, me being in these places, in the fucking Long Park and then goddamn, I don't even remember what part of fucking California it's in. I know it's by a old Air Force base, right? But you know, just doing time in these fucking rural areas, right? You begin to understand what a fucking Nazi is.
Yeah.
I came to first and foremost because you got some motherfuckers who come to work who got the Nazi swastika on their arm. So they make it clear that this is who I am, nigga.
Yeah.
This is who I am. And let me go back for just a quick second. I got sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Tone got sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Ronald got sentenced to life. Danny got sentenced to 25 years. While we were gone, Danny's mother died. Doomy, he took a cop. So Doomy, he got 5, and then he wound up getting some time for DC. So his time wound up being like approximately like 10 years. While we were gone, I remember Danny's mother died. I remember hearing that. That shit just like fucked me up. Ronald's grandmother, Mom Queen, a lady that I love, damn it, like my own grandmother. She passed away. Tone's grandmother, Mom Cornelius Felder, she passed away while we were gone. She was like my other grandmother. These women were truth tellers, man.
Yeah.
These women are, to me, they represent the very finest parts of America, the very finest. Fuck your founding fathers, these are the finest parts of America to me.
These ladies.
Right. And then my grandmother passed away in 2008. My auntie, which was my mother's little sister, she raised me, between her and my grandmother, they raised me like, being like surrogate mothers. Since my mother was missing. My aunt passed away in 2020. No, she passed away in 2022. No, hold on, Yeah, it was 2021.
So I'm noticing you mentioning a lot of matriarchal lines. You talking about women,
right?
That raised you. Right. Where are the men at right now? Where the men at?
My uncle was instrumental. My uncle, he served a bulk of his life, with the United States Air Force. He passed away, and it was unexpectedly, and it devastated me. He passed away in December of 2018. Tone's father passed away while we were gone. I think Ronald's father might have passed away. I can't remember if it was while we were gone or right after he came home, because Ronald came home in like 2000 and I know he did 26 years.
Like 2020, I remember he came home.
Yeah, I know he did 26 years. So I want to say he came home around about 18, 19, somewhere around there, because he did 26 years. So, there were men around. And let me just say this too. Before I go further, because while I was away, I would always hear this, this narrative about, black males in absence, right? Since I've been home, the one thing I've noticed, you got a lot of motherfucking black men handling their business, man. Yeah. A whole lot. When I go places, and I've never believed in like stereotypes. I don't take the shit that the media say. I don't. That's not my gospel. So I've seen a lot of black men handling their motherfucking business. Yeah. And let me just say this. For every motherfucker, especially on cable Fox News, who like to perpetuate the narrative that black men don't take care of their kids, let me just say this. If they don't, and that's a big if they don't, it's learned behavior. So your forefathers, the motherfucking slave owners who passed laws so that enslaved women who you raped could not take them to court and sue them for wages for their kids. Yeah. If they're not taking care of their kids, it's in that motherfucking tradition. Yeah. So let's be clear. Yeah. So don't just point shine a light on our community, motherfucker. It comes from your forefathers. Yeah. So let me just be clear about that. Okay. But you know, being in prison, right? You know, being in these rural areas, you learn a lot about people. I call it the real America. You learn of just how fucking sinister, how barbaric people can be. Because, you know, I can't even just, I can't, it's impossible for me to go into every single thing that I experienced, you know, throughout my prison.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I will say is this, and this is kind of why I had went on my rant last week, you know, about former President Trump, is because, to me, you have all of these people in these rural areas, right? Motherfuckers who they've never been around black folks. I've seen some staff that openly wear swastikas, but a lot of them have one thing in common, and they support this dude, right? And but even before he came into office, right, I've seen these whiteys in these rural areas, right? The shit that they would do, right? I've seen them where they have allowed guys to non-white inmates to have access to weapons. If there was a supposedly race riot, they would encourage non-white inmates. You know, hey, you know, it's something over there, a pole, a shank, an ice pick. You didn't hear from me, but it's over there. You know, just things like that. And you see these things happen. And there was a stigma attached to people from DC. And, you know, but you go through these things. COVID is a whole nother story in itself, you know, being locked down in a cell when, you know, during the height of a pandemic, and motherfuckers don't walk through. I had a cellie in my room, you know, a guy that this motherfucker, I had to wake up every night and shake this motherfucker to make sure that he wasn't dead, because he had, both of us had COVID. We were locked in a room, but he had, his immune system was compromised. He had asthma. So, and I just remember getting out of bed every night and having to shake this motherfucker and be like, hey man, you alive down there? You know, this motherfucker didn't get out of bed for like 3-4 days. Yeah. You know, and, you know, staff, they didn't come around. Yeah. You know, so, you know, the shit that's, you know, a country is only as good as how they treat their most vulnerable. And prisoners are vulnerable. And I would just say that, you know, when you treat prisoners like this, bear in mind that these motherfuckers will be back in society with a lot of them.
You talking about, you spent 30 years in prison.
I spent 30 years in the midst of white folks in rural areas.
White folks in rural, because that's that, you mentioned, on our correspondence going back and forth for our email, you made me look that up. You say, look up where these prisons are. And that was something that stood out to me, these rural areas that all these prisons is concentrated in. And like, I wouldn't have paid attention to it till you pointed it out to me. And I do recall doing 3 years and sitting in prison. I was right there with you. Schuylkill. You spent a lot of your time in Schuylkill in Pennsylvania. And these whiteys, a lot of them, I mean, I came across a lot of these white folks that don't got a clue about, and a lot of one of the white guys that stood out to me that was in, and he used to talk trash about me, say, y'all blacks folks stupid for staying in the city. That's what he said to me. I forgot the guy's name. Y'all black folks are stupid for staying in the city. And these are the type of ideology that these white prison guards had. So I'm just sitting right here, like remembering when I was in there, and I hated to leave you in there. I hated to leave you in there. I looked in your face, I said, Mo, I got this. Ain't no way, out of everybody in this prison, y'all, I looked at you and said, ain't no way this man staying right here. There's probably some good men in there, but I looked at you, I said, you was my inspiration to go out here and link up and build the shit that I was out here doing. People don't know that. People don't know what motivated me. It's like, no way I could stand and accept that y'all gave this man life in prison and we gonna end this story right here. We're not gonna end this story. So we talking about 30 years you sitting in that motherfucker right there. The belly of the beast. 30 years. Do anything stand out to you in these 30 years that you did in prison? I'm sure you've seen race riots. You done seen a whole bunch of shit. Yeah. What third? Because it seems like you living the same day over and over.
Well, I think that, when we get out, people don't realize the level of trauma you bring with you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, because you have seen the very worst of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it on both sides. You see it from some of the guys that you're doing time with, but you see it from the staff a lot.
Mm-hmm.
People who, they make it clear that we don't give a fuck about what happened to your black ass.
Mm-hmm.
You are basically nothing more than a check.
Mm-hmm.
If in some cases, they make it clear if we didn't have to feed you, we wouldn't feed you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let me tell you this. I think what my saving grace was that I did have an education, right? And I love to read. Mm-hmm. And I discovered people while I was away. The people I discovered, they gave me a different kind of purpose, and it helped me to refocus on what it meant to struggle. Mm-hmm. Along the way, I discovered a Sojourner Truth, mm-hmm. A Harriet Jacobs, a Ella Baker, a Fannie Lou Hammond, mm-hmm. a Medgar Evers, a Zora Neale Hurston, of course, Malcolm X, a Fred Hampton, a Mark Clark, mm-hmm. a George Jackson, a Huey P. Newton, a Martin Luther King, right? Like, all of these different people that I was able to discover, along the way, they gave me a different kind of purpose, mm-hmm. and it enabled me, during my darkest hours, it enabled me to be able to focus. And I understood, I read books, the Federal Writers Project, they did a book called The Negro in Virginia. And it was just taking testimony from Negroes who were actually the last generation of people to live on plantations, right? And, and it fascinated me. I was like, wow, like, these motherfuckers were able to endure. So I realized where it was that I came from. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of hopeless nights, that I would lay down and I was like, man, this shit is rough. But every day you get up and you face the battle because you look at it and you say, some of these people, man, they have come of age in a country that has never, had an interest in giving us our full human, well, let me say not give, but wanting to deprive us, because you can't give a man his full humanity. He's born with that. A woman as well. Mm-hmm. But for me, knowing these stories, it enabled me to keep my head high in these rural areas. People who had never been around black folks and who black folks were nothing more than their stereotypes. So, I had to inure myself, against their stereotypes, right? But I always demanded respect.
Yeah, exactly.
I always demanded respect, and I always carried myself accordingly.
My experience, I sat right there, I used to see, you remember you gave me the George Jackson book, because you turned me on to George Jackson and Angela Davis, so you was part of my revolutionary learning process, right? So, so you, like I said, you turned me on to a lot of George Jackson and Angela Davis. I had not read these books. I hadn't known about these people. I knew about the Black Panther Party, and I knew about some of these things, but I recall getting these books from you. And you say,
And I remember when I was still in it, Angela Davis came to DC. And Miss Davis, I hope one day you see this. I'm still interested in meeting you. I definitely want to make acquaintance with her. I want to make acquaintance with Asada. I don't know if that will ever be possible. Hopefully I'm, blessed one day to be able to travel abroad. Mm-hmm. I would love to sit and talk to that sister because, to me, they represent the very best of America.
Angela Davis, right here. I remember you wrote an article. You wrote something for me and I said the speech right in front of Angela Davis because I did have the privilege of meeting Angela Davis. I couldn't. The way you spoke and wrote, I said I can't even write. I can't even read these. I don't know half these words because you're so articulate. People don't know this. You really a scholar. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting in prison and all the guys just come to you for information like. Eric know everything. You was Surrey in prison.
It's
I'm sorry.
How long you want?
We about to wrap up in a second. You good?
Yes, I got something going on.
All right, that's about. All right. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's you know, for me, those were like the people who made it possible for me to make it through, you know, along with, you know, my own strength, you know, like just, you know, knowing that tradition of struggle and that, you know, enabled me to pull through. So you know, I would just hope that, you know, in that tradition, you know, those who choose to tune in, you know, and you know, if you tune in to By Understood, if you tune in to Undeniable, whether you support our city, we have something coming out from another brother. It's, you know, you will be supporting, you know, the very best of like what black folks have to offer. We come from a tradition of struggle. We're not just talking it. This is something that we've lived.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would just hope that people will continue to tune in with Undeniable. They will continue to tune in with By Understood, and you know, support it. You know, support our city. And you know, believe me, you won't be disappointed. You know, because we're moving toward liberation, and it's unapologetic.
Yeah.
It's very unapologetic.
Yeah.
I don't just talk to talk. I would hope that, you know, where I've been qualifies me, you know, to speak on different issues. I'm not a dummy by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would just ask people, you know, hopefully they've been enlightened by what it is that we spoke on today.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will, you know, they will rejoin us, man, on Wednesday. You know, I will do things, you know, periodically that are not Wednesdays, but primarily Wednesdays, Thursdays. Join us.
Yeah. Well, that's real, and because we're gonna wrap up a lot of this conversation. It's so much to unpack here. We done said so much, and I mean, here you have, we got Hicks right here, did 30 years, almost 3 decades, sitting in prison right here in front of us. It's still a surreal experience for me. We thank God for this. We're gonna thank God for this, and we're gonna have to let people keep, like I said, following us. And the conversation, it's only gonna get better.
Yeah, and I want to, you know, make sure, you know, we create a medium where, you know, people, you know, if they have questions, man, you know, when we come on Wednesdays, eventually, I want to get to a point where we're live. But, you know, until that point, you know, if they have questions, man, throughout the week, you know, they shoot their questions, and when we shoot on a Wednesday or Thursday, I'll answer all your questions to the extent that I'm able, right here on air.
Okay. So there you have it. We have Hicks and Delonte Wilkins right here, and y'all already know the By Understood.
The By's always understood, man. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and you know, every time you tune in, I want you to walk away with something different, and walk away with, you know, being better, and just having a better understanding of where we are, and, you know, what it is that we're dealing with, you know, in the United States. But, you know, we come from a tradition of struggle, and I, you know, we just want people to just keep their head high, man, and understand the stock that you come from.
Yeah, okay. Well, there y'all have it, and we're going to wrap it up like this. It's going to be more. Tune in next week, and the week after that, we're going to keep it coming.
Love y'all, man. Y'all stay up.
All right.